When one thinks of Avram Avinu, we often think of a gentle, kind old man sitting in his tent welcoming in guests. What we forget at times is that Avram was not only the father of monotheism, the man who to the world brought the notion of one God, responsibility, obligation, a relationship with our Creator. He was also a warrior. And in this week's Parsha, we find Avram returning victorious from battle. He's greeted by Malki Tzedek, a character in Tanakh who we're told is Melech Shalem, the high priest of Shalem, also known as Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. And Malki Tzedek brings him an unusual feast or a welcome. And he brings him bread and wine, the Torah tells us. And the commentaries on the Pasuk kind of discuss, why is he bringing him bread and wine? What's the point of that? One suggestion, of course, is that that's just the classical meal you'd bring to a returning warrior. They're exhausted, tired, weary from battle, and so you bring them some bread and wine. I once heard a suggestion that I think is far more profound, has a really beautiful message for the great work that NCSY does, and also is really relevant to our lives, our personal lives. And that's that bread and wine represent two seemingly opposite ideas, but that when combined, really animate our Judaism. Wine, we all know, gets better with age. I hope the NCSYers watching this haven't had any wine other than a little bit of Kiddush wine, but for those who are wine aficionados, you know that as a wine ages, it gets better, it gets richer, the taste gets more complex. The same thing is true of Torah, the same thing is true of our Judaism. Bread, on the other hand, as it gets older, it gets stale, it loses its taste, and so the fresher bread is, the more tasty it is. And so Malki Tzedek, the high priest of Yerushalayim, came out to greet Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was the founder of monotheism, and Malki Tzedek said, I have a message for you. I want to teach you, Avram Avinu, I want to teach you a lesson as you go out into the world and try to talk to people about the value of religion, the value of believing in God. It has to be like bread, fresh, relevant. It has to speak to that generation, to that day. It has to be contemporary. It also has to be like wine. It has to be rooted and aged and deep and rich and complex the way wine is. And the older it gets, the more rich it gets. And that's what we know about Torah. Torah and Judaism. It can't just be rooted in the past. It has to be rooted in the past. That's where it draws its richness from. But it also has to be looking forward. It has to be aspirational. It has to have the continuity with the past, but a discontinuity. It has to look forward and say, how do I inform today's world? And so everybody who's watching this, you're involved in NCSY. NCSY is all about that. It's about melding the two, the richness of our Jewish heritage with today's teenagers, with today's world. And all of us, we have that same experience in our lives. It's about that constant search for that balance where we can find richness and profundity in our Judaism, but we can also look forward and say, how does my Judaism speak to me today? The Judaism of thousands of years ago, what does it say to me today? And I wish for all of us that we take that message of Malki Tzedek, that message that Avram Avinu took, and that we bring it into our lives. I think we'll all be enriched for it. Shabbat Shalom.